Emong weakens into a tropical storm and is now nearing Batanes. In its 5 p.m. weather bulletin on Friday, July 25, Pag-asa says Emong was last spotted over the coastal waters of Sabtang, Batanes. It carries maximum sustained winds of 85 kilometers per hour near the center and gustiness of up to 115 kilometers per hour. Emong is moving north-northeastward at 40 kilometers per hour. Tropical cyclone wind signal number 2 is raised in Batanes and Babuyan Islands. Meanwhile, signal number 1 is up over Ilocos Norte, Apayao, and mainland Cagayan. According to Pag-asa, Emong will accelerate north-northeastward and exit the Philippine Area of Responsibility on Friday morning, July 26. The Supreme Court has ruled that the impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte is unconstitutional. Citing the Supreme Court's ruling, its spokesperson Camille Ting says the High Court rules that the complaint is barred by the one-year rule.
In a unanimous decision today, July 25, 2025, the Supreme Court en banc declared the articles of impeachment against Vice President Sara Duterte unconstitutional, that the House impeachment complaint versus VP Sara Duterte is barred by the one-year rule, and that due process or fairness applies during all stages of the impeachment process.
Ting then adds that the Supreme Court ruling includes that the Senate could not acquire jurisdiction over the impeachment proceedings. However, Ting clarifies that it does not absolve the Vice President. Based on the 1987 Constitution, no impeachment proceedings shall be initiated against the same official more than once within a period of 1 year. In this case, there are 4 impeachment complaints filed against the Vice President before the House of Representatives by various groups on December 2, 4, and 19, 2024. The 4th complaint was lodged by resolution approved by more than one-third of the members of the House of Representatives of the 19th Congress on February 5, 2025, which was transmitted as the articles of impeachment to the Senate on the same day. In the ruling written by Senior Associate Justice Marvic Leonin, the court differentiated the first 3 complaints from the 4th complaint. Based on the ruling, the first 3 were filed under Article 11, Section 3.2 of the Constitution, which allows any citizen to file a verified complaint with an endorsement by any House of Representative member. The 4th complaint was filed through Section 3.4 of the Constitution through a verified complaint or resolution by at least one-third of the House of Representatives as member. Malacanang is calling on the public to respect the Supreme Court and place their trust in the country's institutions, following the High Court's ruling that the impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte is unconstitutional. Following the High Court's decision on Friday, July 25, Presidential Communications Office Undersecretary Claire Castro says they have yet to review the full text of the Supreme Court's decision.
We have yet to review the full text of the Supreme Court's decision. We call on everyone to respect the Supreme Court and place their trust in our institutions. The impeachment process is a matter handled by the legislative and judicial branches, and we recognize their independence in carrying out their constitutional mandates.
In its ruling, the Supreme Court said the complaint against Duterte is barred by the one-year rule. Citing the ruling, Supreme Court spokesperson Camille Ting on Friday says the Senate did not acquire jurisdiction over the impeachment complaint. However, still quoting the Supreme Court's ruling, Ting clarifies that the resolution does not absolve Vice President Sara Duterte. Senators say the impeachment court against Vice President Sara Duterte will still proceed even after a Supreme Court decision declaring the impeachment complaint against her as unconstitutional. In a chance interview on Friday, July 25, Senator Joel Villanueva explains that the impeachment court will proceed because it is sui generis, a legal term meaning it is unique and operates independently from the procedures applying to regular courts. Villanueva likens the situation to what occurred during former Chief Justice Renato Corona's impeachment proceedings, where the Supreme Court issued a temporary restraining order, but the Senate impeachment court ultimately ignored it after voting to do so. Villanueva then says that the impeachment proceeding is still within the impeachment court's decision. Meanwhile, Senator Tito Soto shares the same thing, saying that he was told by a legal luminary that the Senate impeachment court can disregard the Supreme Court decision. However, Senator Soto also says that the lawyer's advice will be studied. Soto further says that as a member of the impeachment court, he would rather hear what the House of Representatives has to say. While the House of Representatives will respect the Supreme Court order declaring Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment unconstitutional, the chamber spokesperson warns that such a directive places at risk key principles of checks and balances. The Supreme Court on Friday, July 25, announced that it has ruled the impeachment complaint against Vice President Duterte unconstitutional. In a statement on Friday, House spokesperson Princess Abante says that they will review the Supreme Court decision once they have received a copy. However, Abante reiterates that initiating an impeachment is the sole duty of the House, adding that the impeachment process is not just a legal mechanism but is a vital democratic safeguard. Abante also says allowing judicial interference risks undermining the very principle of checks and balances. She says that no legal technicality should silence an impeachment. According to Abante, the House will exhaust all remedies to protect the independence of Congress and preserve the sanctity of their constitutional role. Last February 5, Duterte was impeached after more than 200 lawmakers filed and signed a fourth complaint, which was hinged on allegations of confidential fund misuse within her offices, threats to ranking officials, and other possible violations of the Constitution. Also in February, 2 petitions seeking to stop the impeachment complaints were filed before the Supreme Court. The first one was from Mindanao-based lawyers who claimed that the House did not observe the Constitution's rules, which requires it to act on filed impeachment complaints within 10 session days. The Vice President herself, represented by allied lawyers including her father, former President Rodrigo Duterte, also asked the Supreme Court to stop the impeachment proceedings on the basis that it violated constitutional provisions, stating that only one impeachment complaint will be initiated against a sitting official per year. The House, however, asserted in its reply to the Supreme Court that the impeachment was addressed within 10 session days, noting that the term session days should not be mistaken with calendar days or working days. Vice President Sara Duterte's defense team welcomes the Supreme Court's decision after it ruled that the impeachment complaint against the Vice President is unconstitutional. In a statement following the Supreme Court's ruling, Duterte's defense team says the decision of the Honorable Court affirms what they had maintained, that the fourth impeachment complaint is constitutionally infirm. It adds that the unanimous decision has once again upheld the rule of law and reinforced the constitutional limits against abuse of the impeachment process. However, the defense team says it remains prepared to address the allegations against Vice President Duterte at the proper time and before the appropriate forum. In a separate statement, the law firm of Torreon and Partners tags the Supreme Court decision as a resounding triumph of due process and constitutional order. It echoes the defense team's pronouncement that lawyers have already pointed out how the impeachment complaint against Vice President Duterte suffered constitutional defects from the beginning. The law firm then expresses its gratitude to the Supreme Court for standing as the final sentinel of constitutional rights. President Bongbong Marcos vows to make healthcare accessible for people in rural areas, expressing concern over high mortality rates in regional and other major hospitals. Speaking at the launch of the PhilHealth's Yaman ng Kalusugan program on Friday, July 25, President Marcos attributes the high mortality rate to the very far distance of health facilities from rural communities, which often causes residents to delay consultations until their conditions are severe.
At nagtatanong kami, ang sagot sa amin, simple lang. Dahil napakalayo ng ating malalaking ospital doon sa kanilang pinanggagalingan. At kaya napakahirap makapunta kahit na may kaunting nararamdaman.
Because of this, residents in far-flung areas often seek hospital consultations only when their condition has become severe.
Paano natin may iwasan yon? Dahil kailangan ibaba ang healthcare natin na hindi lamang sa malalaking ospital, kung hindi sa mga maliliit na mga clinic, maliliit. Ang tawag natin dati, RHU, yung Rural Health Unit.
YAKAP is a component of PhilHealth's expanded primary care benefit program. It was initially launched in 2021 as PhilHealth's Konsultasyong Sulit at Tama program. It has expanded into a comprehensive primary care package.